Hello and welcome to GameSpot After Dark, episode 48. This is GameSpot's official video game podcast. I'm your host, filling in for Jake, who's taking a break. I'm Callie Plaguey, and I'm joined by John-Luke Sipke.
What up?
Michael Hyam.
What it do?
And a very special guest today, Steve Saylor, the blind gamer and media editor at Can I Play That?
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, this is the pleasure's all mine. I've been excited to talk with you all about a ton of stuff, and of course, probably The Last of Us, which I am very excited to talk about as well.
It's going to be a fun one. One of the more fun discussions of The Last of Us.
Yes, I was going to say this is going to be some good discourse. You could say the only discussion I'm interested in having about The Last of Us.
Fair.
You know, it's quite the discoursey game, but we're going to have a good time today. Before we jump into what we've been playing, we always do this. I don't know if you've heard of our famous segment here, the Chris from Dayton, Ohio segment. I'm not going to do the song this time because I'm introing it and the dynamic just doesn't work there. However, this is the segment that everybody knows and loves, where we ask you, who the hell are you?
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm Steve Saylor. I'm commonly known as a blind gamer. I'm an accessibility advocate and consultant. I've worked with several studios, including Ubisoft, EA, and most recently Naughty Dog on The Last of Us Part 2. I am a media editor at caniplaythat.com, which is an accessibility focused website where we do video game reviews from an accessibility standpoint. And also I am now kind of sort of known as the guy who cried on the internet about accessibility settings in The Last of Us 2. And yeah, that's been a surreal experience.
It's a wonderful thing to be known for. Of all the things to be known for on the internet, that's one of my favorite ones.
If people know me, I'm a big fan of crying. So shouts out to you, Steve.
Aw.
We love to cry. So
all right, let's get into it. All right, let's go.
So part of the Chris from Dayton, Ohio segment is like, what kind of games do you like? Are there like games that you always go back to? That kind of thing. Gaming background stuff, just so people get to know you a little bit better.
Well, for me, my gaming background is kind of a bit weird and mixed. I grew up mainly as a casual gamer at best, and mainly because from an accessibility standpoint, I always thought like I just sucked at video games. I would watch my brother play them more often than I would play them myself. But the games I was able to play and enjoy mostly are a lot of the sort of the franchise type games. So anything from like Star Wars, Star Trek, the Matrix, even like any of those kind of games. I think probably though some of my favorite games of all time. I mean, The Last of Us 2 is now up there. Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, and Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, and that kind of sums up a lot of sort of what I enjoy the most, which is something that's very heavy and story based, and just like something I can just sort of sink my teeth into without it being super huge and open world, because sometimes those can scare me, aka Skyrim. But yeah, so that's kind of my gaming background, and I've only just been kind of really getting into hardcore into the gaming side since 2015, since starting my YouTube channel, where I started playing video games for just to kind of entertain my friends, and basically I've been saying for years, hey, I suck at video games, here's proof. And it was just a great way to be able to do that. And then eventually over time I kind of got into the accessibility side, and I've been an advocate ever since. So I'm always on the lookout for sort of amazing games, and yeah, that's a lot of it kind of summed up in a nutshell. But yeah, that's my gaming background.
That's awesome. So Breath of the Wild and Red Dead Redemption 2 are kind of linked in my mind because of like how you just kind of go where your heart takes you.
Oh yeah.
And follow the the weird incidental story things that happen. So I see the pattern there for sure. But I forget what I was going to say. I don't know. I know what I was going to say. I think getting into like covering an aspect of games really changes your relationship with them. And I was going to ask if like you feel like your experience with gaming has changed since you've gotten into that accessibility advocacy, because you can tell like it meant so much to you. I mean, everybody could see that with The Last of Us Part 2. Do you think covering it has something to do with that, or just because you've played a lot of games in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it definitely has changed sort of my relationship with games. Kind of a quick story. Like I said, I always thought that I just sucked at games, and it was more like on my YouTube channel, I used to say like it was more funny to watch me fail than it is for me to actually do well. And it wasn't until I was invited to be a panelist at a UX summit that was put on by Ubisoft in Toronto, and they had developers from all around the world kind of come up and learn from other developers about UI, UX, and they kind of dedicated a whole day to accessibility. And I had obviously like heard of accessibility at that point, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was more thinking of it from my perspective. I was like, oh, I'm the only gamer here that's on a panel. The rest of all the just developers. And I felt like I was kind of like representing the gamers to the people that get to make our favorite games. And it wasn't until I was on stage in the middle of the panel, and I had Bryce Johnson, who is the accessibility tech lead for Microsoft, who helped co-invent the adaptive controller. And then I had Alex Neoniki, concept artist on The Last of Us 2 at Naughty Dog, and she was also largely responsible for the accessibility on Uncharted 4. Sitting there, it was actually in that moment, in like, I think there's video proof of this. You can be able to see kind of this particular moment when I realized it was like, okay, I've been telling myself that for years I sucked at games, but it was that games sucked for me. Mm-hmm. And it was that moment forward that accessibility kind of became basically just how what I focused on. And it allowed me to sort of take a look at games from that sort of critical eye, and more different than sort of just reviewing a game on the story and gameplay, which I still do, and I love discussing all of that stuff. But being able to see kind of the nuts and bolts and the concepts of accessibility was really interesting to me, and definitely changed the way I sort of saw games. Like, for instance, The Witcher 3. I know how much of a huge like game that is for people, and it's some people's favorite game of all time.
Jake Decker.
Yeah,
probably. And I was so frustrated by it because of the lack of accessibility options. Mm-hmm. And I know that's ironic because I'm wearing a Cyberpunk shirt right now, which I do hope that with Cyberpunk that they kind of change the way they sort of look at accessibility. But the text was so small on that screen that I literally was inches away from my TV, and I still could barely read the menus that were in that. And same with Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. I had never played that before up until literally last year. I thought it was like kind of like it was one of those games that just sort of passed me by, and I know how great and how amazing that is. And again, it's like on like the top list of some of the best games of all time, but I grew frustrated with it because it just wasn't accessible for me. Mm-hmm. And I actually had to stop halfway through because I couldn't play any further. And that to me was frustrating, but also made me more focused on like, okay, I want to make sure that like kids growing up today that are disabled, whether you have a visual impairment, you're deaf or hard of hearing, or you have a motor disability, I want to make sure that the games that those kids are going to be able to play are going to be accessible to them, so they don't have to have that frustration. And that to me spurs me on as anytime I get frustrated over options that are like accessibility options that are not in the games, but and I get to celebrate the successes, much like The Last of Us.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think there's lots of things about gaming that in the past have been barriers for lots of different kinds of people to get into them, right? So it's not always about accessibility, but I think a lot of people and a lot of our listeners can really relate to that. So we'll talk about that more in depth with The Last of Us specifically.
Sure. I just want to call out, you was spitting bars when you said, was it when you realized that you didn't suck at games suck for you, and I was like, that's bars right there. Because like, yeah, that I just saying that, I'm like, that clicks for me. I'm like, yes, I see exactly what you're trying to get at, and I hope folks like you have really, because for us, we take games, like we play them and we take them for granted in many ways because we can interact with them on that level, but it's easy for us to forget about, like, okay, there are small things that can break a game for someone who might need that little extra help to just get past certain thing, like text. Like, of course, in RPG, you need to read text to advance, but if it's illegible, then it breaks the entire game, and that's unfortunate. So I'm really glad like these conversations are becoming normalized, and that's really cool, man.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I get it too. Like, it's not. I'm never upset at anybody who just sort of doesn't think of these sort of things, or even developers when they're not sort of thinking about it when they're in development, because I get it. Like, it's something that doesn't necessarily touch on an aspect of life, whether they either don't have a disability themselves or they don't know anyone that has a disability. So that never will always come top of mind. But that's why there are advocates like myself that are speaking up about it and basically letting developers, like, it's okay. We get it. You know about it now, and let's see if we can be able to work together to at least be able to create something. Because we always say, like, even when I'm consulting with studios, it's like, it's okay to start small and build up from there for future projects, because you learn as you go, and we're not expecting every game to be 100% perfectly accessible out of the gate. Even The Last of Us 2, it started with the accessibility that they brought in on Uncharted 4, and a few of the things that they even added in as features that weren't necessarily built for accessibility in Uncharted 4 became a staple accessibility feature in The Last of Us. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but like, it started from there, and because of what they learned from it, Naughty Dog was basically able to take Last of Us 2 and just sort of like, okay, let's start from the beginning and let's run with it and see how far we can go.
Yeah, and the more that happens, the more games are going to have those kinds of features. But yeah, we will talk about that in a second. That's a nice little teaser.
Yeah.
First, we of course have to talk about what we've been playing lately that isn't The Last of Us. I guess let's start with you, Jean-Luc.
Well, some of that isn't The Last of Us. I actually can't
or
talk
watch
about
or
it
doing
or watch. Well, so Jake's not here, so I mean, let's just get right into it. Anime.
Anime. Let's go.
Anime. I've been watching Death Note again.
Dude, I just did that too.
Me and my girlfriend have been like just finding new stuff, and I was like, we were like going through like the list of everything that, like, you know, we're like that we loved before we met each other, and like, all right, so it's like, you know, we watched Full Metal, we've been played Persona 4 and all this stuff, and we're going through it, and we're kind of getting to the end of the list, and one of them was Death Note for me that I had seen. She tried watching the first episode a while back and hated it, and we're like, okay, I was like, okay, that's fair, but then for whatever reason we were just like, yeah, you know, let's give it another try. So we watched like first episode, and we watched the second episode, and by the second episode she's like, I love this show. Great.
Yeah, it's
all the time.
Such a Georgia show. I can't believe she didn't like the first episode. It has a goth girl in it.
Oh, she loves
Misa.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's like absolutely Georgia's kind of girl.
Yeah, my mom hates Misa.
Everyone hates Misa. I don't get it. I mean,
my brother and I forced my mom to watch Death Note like a couple of weeks ago. We didn't really force her, but
perfect foil for light. Like, you have these two intellectual men who are like battling it out, and then Misa just comes in and, and just fucks everything up just by being so stupid. And you're like, I love you, Misa. You're amazing. That show is fantastic. Light's got mad incel vibes that like I feel like
Facts.
playing it now or like watching it now after like seeing what the internet has to offer is like really recontextualized. Has recontextualized Light in a real no good way. Not that he was ever good, but
hit different.
It hit different. That show, I don't know. I just love that show still. Like I think like the battle of wits between Kira and Eller is so good.
It's so God, what a good. I mean, I love that the animation is like kind of shit too. Like
yeah,
it has such good mid 2000s vibes.
Yeah, like I know it's like also because part of it's for like from the manga, but like Ryuk, like his face just never changes at all.
Yeah.
He has like that bug eyes. My favorite shot I think in the whole anime is when Light knows that there's security cameras in his house, so he's like pretending to act casual. So he buys like a porn magazine and he's just like looking at like pinups of girls, and it's just this shot of him looking, and then Ryuk's over his shoulder and his eyes are just bulging out. And I'm just staring right at it. It's the most good shit. It's good shit. I'm really enjoying rewatching it. I was like a little worried. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I won't enjoy it as much the second time. Nope. Even better.
Good. All right. We're going to keep the anime train rolling. Michael?
Oof. I'm going to try and get through. I realize when I listen back to episodes, I usually take up the most time to talk about who's hitting me up on Discord. Okay, never mind. I usually take the most amount of time to talk about games, but I'm going to try and get through these fast. I actually don't have that much to say about some of the things I've been playing. To continue the anime train, I guess talk about SinoAlice, which just came out today, Wednesday. It's the new Yoko Taro game, and it's a mobile RPG with gacha elements and all that. It's pretty dope because this being a mobile RPG, it's kind of like the expectations for storytelling are like they're pretty low. So Yoko Taro's be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go like balls to the wall, wild as fuck. And he basically takes fairy tale characters like Alice, Little Red Riding Hood, and characters like that from books and fairy tales, and then turns them into badass anime girls.
Like Alice in Wonderland Alice? Yeah,
like Alice in Wonderland Alice.
Okay.
And it's like this super dark and disturbing story that's kind of cryptic too. And then it's got some really good artwork, and it's got some really good music because Yoko Taro is the creative director, and the composer for this game is the same composer as Nier Automata. Ooh. So it's like this music is, I don't want to say, oh, this music is too good for a mobile game, but in a way I'm like, if you put this soundtrack over a epic battle in Nier Automata, it would be like fucking perfect fit. That's how good this music is in this mobile RPG. But it's fun. Like, I'm actually not too familiar with how like games such as Fate Grand Order work or Grand Blue Fantasy, the mobile RPGs. So I'm having a little bit of trouble like getting my head around how all these mechanics work. I'm sure people look at this, but okay, yeah, we know how this works. But for me, I'm like, it's a lot of menu stuff. But I don't know. It's free to play. It's a mobile game. Check it out.
So wait, is it like it's typical gacha, like where you're like collecting different characters and they have like the different stats kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's more of the weapons that are kind of like the gacha things. So it's like weapons are also spells, and then they have different tiers, and then you're supposed to roll with whatever. Like you get chests, and then you get the different types of weapons.
Too
then
complicated
you take those
for me.
Yeah, it actually is. It's quite complicated.
You had me at edgy fantasy girls, yes. And then you lost me at it's really complicated.
Fair.
I'm guessing this game doesn't do it, but I'm just thinking about the idea of like what Yoko Taro could do with like a game that's like has like microtransactions in it and like the kind of bullshit he could get up to.
Yeah.
Like
I have
you need to pull out your mom's credit card and pay in order to like keep your other characters' games alive.
Your mom's credit card.
I have an interview with it, or I did an interview with him in the lead up. I'm still working on the story, but I asked him about how he feels about monetization and how you're going to continue the story because this is an ongoing game. He says, I think the story will continue for as long as sales continue. Human greed is never ending, isn't it? And
I love that.
And also, I asked
Taro
him,
said, "Fuck capitalism."
but he's more like, yo, as long as this is around, I'm gonna be complicit. And you know what? I get it. And also, I asked him, like, has things changed for him since Nier Automata? And he's always like, or he said that, quote, I've always been stubborn, but once Automata became a hit, everyone began to say yes to my stubborn demands. Everyone may think that I became arrogant because I made a hit and got carried away. I'm upset because I've always been arrogant. I'm like, all right.
Wow.
Yoko Taro has like that. It's like if Kojima was just like way more open about, even more so. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like
Yoko Taro's
Kojima
just-
pretends not to be that weird.
Yeah,
To some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kojima's like, I'm extremely cool, and Yoko Taro's like, oh, I'm quirky.
Like
Yeah.
I remember another quote from Yoko Taro where he said something to the degree of like, they asked him like, oh, would you ever make like a sequel to this? And he was like, if you give me money, I'll do whatever. Like,
You can look up any interview with Yoko Taro. He says some wild shit, and it's good. I think someone asked him about like, oh, why are all the characters in Nier Automata like sexy robot girls? And he's like, well, I just wanted to make attractive girls in my game.
yeah.
That's it. I like hot
It's not
anime
that
girls.
deep.
It's not that deep. Basically, that's what he said. And I was like, salute to you, my man.
Wanted 2B's
Wait.
butt to look good.
Yeah, and I guess, hey, shouts out. Y'all mentioned Hideo Kojima.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
What a segue.
I've been playing Death Stranding on PC because Callie assigned that to me, and I am very glad because I am one of the people who absolutely adore Death Stranding. For as bizarre or as ridiculous as it might get, it's not that outlandish when you distill it down to its core themes. And I remember that as I'm playing this, I'm like, oh shit, like, damn, it is different too. Oh my god, like
On PC.
I was gonna ask. No, like during
Yes.
quarantine.
and during quarantine.
Duh, the world.
Yeah,
Oh my
we've
God.
talked about the world. Yeah, forgot about the world, right?
I was like, whoa, the 4K, the ray tracing.
Well, you know that
Ultra
too.
wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an analogy for the pandemic right there.
Yeah.
Okay, ray tracing.
Oh my god. Yeah, Death Stranding is it's different now because we've talked about it at lengths on this podcast last year and all that, so I don't want to get too deep into that. But as far as like the PC version goes, it's wild because I'm playing this. I said this, Alessandro and I are been playing it, and we're like, "Yo, the frame rate is like too damn high." Like this, because we're so used to playing it on PS4 where it's like 30 or sub 30 FPS, and it's fine for that kind of game because you're mostly, you know, doing the hiking thing and going from place to place. But here I'm playing on PC, and like, this shit seems fake. It's like too good. But yeah, it looks and runs incredibly well. Playing ultra wide, just being able to have an excuse to dive back into that stuff. Like I'm just walking across grass as Norman Reedus, and I'm like, hell yeah, this game is sick.
That game is sick. I
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I think I've been thinking about it a lot lately, partially because I know it's coming to PC, but just how everyone was like, what a weird and wacky game. But it's like it's not that weird.
Nope.
Like
Nah, yeah.
don't know.
It has like really odd story beats, but overall, it's not that weird.
I don't know. It's got that like whatever you want to call it, like capital A anime or like soap opera-y
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
tone to it. And so to me, that's just like a form of like storytelling
Yeah.
Mm.
choice rather than like I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who thought it was a really pretentious game, and like that's
I can
fine.
see that.
I can
Yeah.
see that. That's just not how I read it. You know, I read my reading of Death Stranding was like it's such an earnest, like heartfelt, like here's just this concept of being good to your fellow human
Mhm.
beings
Yeah, and it's
for
abstracted.
60 hours.
Yeah, yeah, or however long you play it. Like,
Yeah.
it's abstracted in really weird ways, but overall, like it's pretty digestible. So I really appreciate it. It runs really well on PC. It uses the Decima engine, which is what Horizon Zero Dawn uses, and Horizon Zero Dawn is actually supposed to come out on PC this summer. So if you're looking forward to that, it's probably going to run really well as well.
Nice.
I'm really interested to play because that's a game that kind of I had to skip because my setup at the time was using a very small TV, and there was a lot of really small text, so it was hard for me to play.
Yeah.
But now that's coming out on PC, I've changed my setup a bit. Kind of explain, I'm sitting in front of a 50-inch TV that is acting as my computer monitor and my gaming TV, and that's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from me. So when you mention frame rates and ultra wide, I'm like, ooh, I want to try this so bad now.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, now that you mentioned it, OG Death Stranding on PS4, there's a lot of small text, especially in menus when you're trying to navigate the map and read what your orders are trying to tell you, what your quest objectives are. And there's I think a lot of neat storytelling is told through emails. And there's very long emails, and it's all text-based for that respect, and I can definitely see that, like, having to miss out on that sort of thing, because I think there was like a text option for the PS4 version, but I don't know if it only applied to subtitles or like main core text, so I don't know if it helped the menu stuff at all.
I think there was a patch that came out afterwards that did increase the font size a little bit. I don't know whether that was just for subtitles or if that was across the board, but I do know that there were some UI elements that did not have the font size increase, because that's hard to do once a game is kind of already out there. Outer Worlds was actually the only one that kind of like actually made that happen, because that was one of those games last year that also had small text. But then one developer at Obsidian basically and kind of created a custom font size setting for it, and he told me that he essentially did it in an afternoon, but it took 3 months to be able to fix all the UI bugs that came with it.
Wow.
And thankfully, Obsidian, after launch, was able to be like, you know what? Let's add this in as a patch later on. And it basically changed the way people can be able to play the game. And it was the first time I actually was able to jump in, and I really enjoyed it because of that. So I know how hard it is to add in that extra sort of font size in a game that's already launched, but I think being on PC, hopefully, like, fingers crossed that they'll add in a few little extra sort of things to kind of make it a little bit easier for people to read the text.
Yeah, definitely.
Or, at the very least, mods might help with that. I wonder if there's mods for The Witcher 3, speaking of. I bet Jake would know.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There are, I think. I haven't played around with those specifically. I know there are a lot of really cool accessibility mods for Cuphead, which was something that I was very cool to see. So
that's cool.
Yeah, the mods are great. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Michael, was that the last one you wanted to touch on?
I have, at the time of recording, or by the time this podcast goes up, I will be able to talk about a Ubisoft game I got to see before official reveal. It's revealed now as y'all are listening to this, but Hyperscape, their battle royale FPS. So all of you, Callie, Jean-Luc, Steve, plug your ears. You don't know nothing. I'm just it's all good.
I got the reveal. I got the reveal like 2 weeks before you.
Oh shit! Wow.
Yeah.
Ain't
So
nobody
in your face, Michael.
Damn, I thought I was awesome.
NDAs. I can't.
I also watched your videos earlier.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's we have. I think Tony and I did a discussion video, and then I did like a breakdown video, and then. So I don't really want to get into it. It actually does some neat things. So you can check out those videos to get like a detailed breakdown of all its different mechanics. I think it's worth giving a shot. But if you're burnt out on Battle Royale, I get it. This is for someone who's looking for more of an arena shooter style game. I think the most important thing to note is that its respawn mechanics are really interesting. Yeah, definitely check that out. It's free to play. There's a tech test at the time of this recording. I don't know exactly how you get into that, or if you can, but stay posted if you're interested, because Ubisoft will, of course, be talking about that as they inch closer to, I guess, Ubisoft Forward or whatever they have planned for that. But I just want to shout out the gameplay video that we got, because when we squatted up, everyone squatted up for it was like a big press event over Discord, and then I squatted up with Khalif Adams, who's been on the show,
Yeah.
and Blessing Adeoye Jr.,
Who's
been on the
also
show.
been on the show.
Two of my great friends out there.
I love those two guys.
Yeah, they're the best, man. I fucking love COD and Bless. So we squatted up because I hit them up on Discord. I'm like, yo, let's take these fools. Every time we jumped in the match, we played like 10 matches and we're like, all right, this is a W. We're getting the W. It's like, we're getting the dub right now. We just got our ass whooped, bro. The last match we played before we had to break out into interviews, we're like, yo, this is the one. All right, we got to do this. And I said, okay, y'all better play your A game because I'm recording this. I'm trying to get the dub for GameSpot on YouTube and shit because I gotta look good. But I trust y'all. So we actually got the win. You'll be able to watch that, and it has the voiceovers too, and just like bleeps after bleeps after bleeps. It's really good. It's so funny at the end. We were just tripping balls, yo, because we were panicking in many ways because the way the game works at the very end. There's some neat mechanics there that really ups the ante in terms of the intensity. And we were just tripping. And when we won, we're like, yo, look at us. Look at us. Who'd have thought? Not me. Like, you literally, Bless and I literally said that in sync. And you could hear it on the video.
Yeah. Yes.
That's incredible.
And Kaz,
that's
like,
the real W.
Yeah. And Kaz like a dad to us. He's like commander and giving us orders and stuff. And we're like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've played Warzone with COD. He's very much like that because he was like, I was playing with Andrew Renee, and the three of us were kind of like trying to figure stuff out. And COD's like, all right, let's go here. We gotta go into it. We're gonna get creamed. Let's go.
Yeah, Commander Ka right there.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, yo, just tell me what to do, and I got you, man. So that was so much fun, man. I love those dudes. Those are my guys.
As of the time this goes up, you can watch all of those videos on our YouTube and everything.
Sure can, and I'll have written versions of all that
yeah.
stuff as well. So that's kind of what I've been playing this week.
You've been up to a lot. Michael works constantly.
Too much.
Yeah.
Define work.
You need a break, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's always so weird when you work in games and you're like, man, I've been working so much, and people kind of look at you like,
It's like you play video games for a living. How is that work? It's like,
and I'm like, no, I've been in a constant existential crisis for 3 weeks because of my Last of Us 2 review, and everyone on Twitter is mean, and I want to cry, and you're like, it's a lot of work. It's emotional work.
I feel you. I totally get it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Facts. All facts.
I keep bringing up The Last of Us, but we are not done talking about what we've been playing. Steve, it's your turn.
I guess like I'll add a list. I didn't put it in the breakdown, but it's kind of leading on to the sort of the anime discussion. I have been it's anime adjacent. I've been doing my yearly watch of the Matrix trilogy. I've been doing it literally since I've been watching The Matrix pretty much every single year since 1999, and it is my favorite movie of all time. I mean, I even got this bad boy as basically that's been in my
I've
had this. For,
it's Johnny Silverhand.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I've had this for like almost I'd say 17, 18 years at this point or something.
If you're listening to the audio, it's a bust of Keanu Reeves.
As Neo from the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like the size of your head. It's beautiful.
I love it. So I've been watching. I watched that quite a bit, and because this time was like a perfect time because everyone was sort of talking about Cyberpunk a lot, and I was like, I just need my Keanu fix. I need my whoa moments. So I was watching that a lot, and then I've also. Other than Last of Us, I've been playing Destiny 2. It's one of those games that I didn't think I was going to like at first. I didn't actually jump in when it kind of first came out. A funny story is that in 2018, I had a friend of mine that I've known for now 15 years, and I knew he loved Destiny. Like, he was a streamer. He streams exclusively Destiny, and I wanted to jump in, and then PlayStation put Destiny 2 Forsaken as its free PS Plus game of the month, and I downloaded it and I asked him, I was like, hey, could you maybe like Sherpa me through this and kind of help me out and maybe we can stream this together? And he said, well, I absolutely would love to, but I gotta let you know, I suck at this probably just as much as you do. It'd be like the blind leading the blind. And I said, well, that's what we're gonna call it. So we started up a stream in early October. Shout out to T Morris. He's the T monster on Twitch. Him and I, pretty much almost every single week since October 2018, we've been getting together and playing Destiny 2. And it was so cool. And I love the new season better than the previous season, because the previous season I thought was way too grindy.
It was terrible.
Just too slow. The only thing I liked about it was when the Almighty fell, and then I was like, you wait an hour for 5 minutes? I don't get it. But
my girlfriend was so mad at me because I was like, hey, they're dropping this thing at like 11 o'clock or whatever it was. And I was like, I'm just going to hop on. It'll happen real quick. I'm waiting there for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, no, it's finally starting. Like, you can see the missiles are slowly hitting this thing. And she's just like, I know you like this game. I'm upset.
Yeah. It seems very anticlimactic, but I'm like, you don't understand. There's missiles coming from Mars or from the moon or wherever it's coming from.
It takes a while.
It takes exactly.
Escape velocity.
100%.
Realistic.
And I'm loving this new season. Jumping into, I'm really excited for Beyond Light in September.
Me too.
And yeah, I play Warlock. I'm on PS4, and I don't care what people say. Warlocks are great, especially it's an accessibility thing. The Warlock jump, best jump in the game, and I am actually able to do all the platforming stuff because of that jump alone. So yeah, don't knock me over.
I think Warlocks are good. I think Hunters are the ones that are... Hunters are getting a lot of shit lately. I'm a Hunter. I'm all about the
Hunters. Hunters are great. I won't knock that, but I mean, y'all didn't show up for the Guardian games where the Titans just basically spanked every one of us.
Couldn't. I mean, that was probably like the lowest point where I just could not care. I was like, I
was okay with taking silver. I'm fine with that. That's great. We'll take second place. So, but yeah, that's basically what I've been playing.
Awesome. I guess I'll be really fast. I'm still, I'm playing a lot of Animal Crossing still. I play every single day. And today I did some absolutely buck wild Nookazon trades. So everybody be really proud of me.
Ooh.
I traded 100 Nook Miles tickets for 5 mushroom lamps so I can build my enchanted fairy circle in a forest.
That's business.
Wow. That's impressive. I love that.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm moving all of my rocks into a circular formation. And the way you can manipulate where rocks spawn is by understanding how they spawn. So you can break rocks with fruit power. This sounds absolutely ridiculous, but you can break them and then they respawn within a day. And you just have to put items on every other square of land where a rock could spawn. And occupy that space to force it to spawn where you want, and in my case, in a circular pattern, so I can have this enchanted forest thing going on. So I've started putting down my mannequins, and the reason you use mannequins is because if you alter the design, the mannequins go away. So it takes a while to put them down, but there's no cleanup. It's going to take me like a full week to do. I'm really excited.
I've heard that grind is tough for Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it. I love these long-term projects. I'm excited to finally have an area on my island. I focused a lot of my design on my flyover. I wanted my flyover to be really impressive when people came to my island. So I did that, and then now I'm gonna go from there. I kind of have this enchanted waterfall kind of. My island theme is kind of cottage core, but kind of a little bit of magic in it. And related to that, my inspiration has been I've been watching Outlander, which is the Twilight of Game of Thrones. It's fantasy, but a romance novel.
Okay. So instead of werewolves, there's dragons.
No, there's neither. I meant as in it's about a woman who travels back in time and then falls in love with a guy in the past, and then
So it's an isekai.
It is absolutely an isekai. So we're back on anime. So it's an isekai, a live action isekai about a woman in Scotland. She's British, but she's in Scotland. She travels back in time, but she has a husband in her present day, which is like 1946. And she travels back in time, and then she meets this incredibly sexy Scotsman.
Oh, no.
And then she's like, what shall I do? And then
as the age-old story starts, you go back in time, fall in love with a Scotsman. Yep, same old
I mean,
tale.
like, is it cheating if your husband hasn't been born yet? Like, you know,
right?
Whoa, right? These are some deep questions.
So it's really actually a super graphic show. Like a lot of sex, a lot of like sexual violence.
Okay, so that's the Game of Thrones part.
A lot of murder. It's set in the 1740s, and it's just before there's a Scottish, in real life there's like a lot of like historical shit going on. So like in real life there was a rebellion against the British crown, and so like they're preparing for that, and she like knows he'll die, so they're like trying to stop it or whatever. Been watching a lot of that. It's really intense. So I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna take the magical fairy selkie shit from the show and apply that to my Animal Crossing island.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, you watch a lot of trash. Like you own it too. Like,
dude, I watch so much trash. I've been watching 90 Day Fiancé. 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days ended. Now we're on two different versions of 90 Day Fiancé. 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After, which is a follow-up season.
90 Day Fiancé Kiwami.
I love that so much. Oh.
And then 90 Day Fiancé the other way, where they moved to not the US.
Okay, I get it.
Okay, I follow. Yeah, okay.
And there's a woman who's moving to Jordan, and she just doesn't understand what that means at all. So that's what I'm up to. Also, Love Island. I watch Love Island every week with my girl.
90 Day Fiancé Royal Golden Kiwami. I don't know. That sounds dope.
That's
definitive edition.
Oh.
Absolutely. So welcome to my life. Let's go ahead and move on to our what?
Before we get off, I'm here with Michael. Jake's not here. Prime opportunity. Where are you at in Sailor Moon? I need to know.
I'm still in season 1. I think.
I mean, I am too. It's like 60 episodes.
Yeah, each season's like 60 episodes. We have Sailor, Mars, Jupiter.
Did you get Jupiter?
No, I'm about to get to Sailor Jupiter, but
okay.
So yeah, real quick, since like fuck you, Jake. We're gonna Sailor Moon is shit.
For the record, Jake upgraded his stance on anime from no anime to some anime. Facts. Because of the cyberpunk. True. The first thing he said to me the day the cyberpunk, he was like, Callie, have you heard the news? And I had like just woken up, and I was like, what? And he's like, Trigger's making a cyberpunk anime. And I was like, you know what Trigger is? Anyway.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Sailor Moon is that it's the most comforting thing to watch for me. It
really is.
It's so delightful. That shit is funny as fuck.
No, it's like legitimately really funny. Animation is like, okay, so like Sailor Moon gets like a rep for like low budget animation, which is like true because it's like they reuse that shit. But the actual like drawings are like really well done. Like that show looks beautiful.
Question for both of you: are you guys watching the sub, the dub, or the Viz redub?
The Viz redub.
Good.
I'm watching the sub.
Because the
Viz sub, so it's like
the Viz redub fixes the kissing cousins drama.
Yes, I've heard.
And turns them back into lesbians.
Yeah, hey, shouts out to lesbians. You know what I'm saying? Shit.
Though, you haven't got there yet. I don't know if you've got there. There's a plot thread that happens right before Jupiter shows up. That is like in 2020. I'm like, this is problematic and weird.
Oh shit! I haven't gotten there yet.
There's like some weird like a girl falls in love with like a dude who's like probably in his 30s and she's like 14, 15, and I'm like, this is weird.
Anime.
Thanks. Otherwise,
I have like a little PTSD with Sailor Moon because obviously with the last name of Sailor, not spelt the same way, but last name of Sailor, I was called Sailor Moon so much as a kid.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
I was like, yeah, and I got like so mad that I'm like, I've never watched this show,
Oh,
and
shit.
and I'm like, but as an adult, I'm like, you know what? I've been hearing so much about it. I've been trying to slowly dip my toe into anime. I just finished Evangelion for the first time not too long ago.
My man.
I love that, and I've been sort of trying to dip my toe in either Avatar, Full Metal, or
Yes!
Sailor Moon.
You can't
And
go
I'm not
wrong
sure
with
which
any of
one
those.
yet.
All of
Okay,
those are
all right,
excellent.
cool.
Avatar is a perfect television show.
Avatar is the perfect television show.
Okay.
I would
know
also
it's
argue
on Netflix Canada, so
Full Metal is close to perfect as well.
Also, yeah, I love Avatar. It is so important to me. I love it so much. Just perfect show.
Sailor Steve.
I think that it's hey, I get it. It's fine. I'll totally be fine with
Take
that.
that as a compliment now.
Well,
I will. I'll dive into. I'll dive into Avatar. I'll dive into Avatar next.
good. We'll have to have you back for like an anime book club after you've watched some of those, and we can chat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I am on board.
Anime is good. It's good and bad, as all things are.
That's
I don't know.
that's a box quote for your ass.
As the last half of Evangelion or the last few episodes kind of proven to me, I was like, wait, why are we in his head the whole entire time now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably move on to some topics. We got a really brief one that we'll start with. I know we've been like totally teasing this Last of Us conversation, but we're first going to talk about the Crysis remaster, which was delayed after a very unfortunate. It was a leak, wasn't it?
What happened?
So they leaked the teaser trailer, which was supposed to come out today at the time we were recording, got leaked a day early by, I think, Microsoft by accident. And everyone looked at it and was like, this just looks like the PC version of Crysis. This looks terrible. Or like not terrible, it doesn't look remastered. So
gamers did what gamers do, and they were really upset.
And then they basically were like, hey, we heard your concerns and it's getting delayed a couple weeks, which I don't really know what you can do in a couple weeks.
I hate this. I wish
That's never happened before. By the way.
It's so weird.
Dude, there is this one Simpsons quote I think about all the time, and I don't even know the exact word for word quote, but Bart is complaining to Comic Book Guy about something, and Comic Book Guy basically makes this comment like, not art, like art isn't for you, like the creators don't owe you anything, kind of like shit. And I was just like, I think about that a lot, and I wish I knew the exact quote because it's way more funny than the way I said it. But
I mean, it's like the thing is like I do agree with those people, like because I watched the trailer and I was like, yeah, it just kind of looks like Crysis, like it, in the sense that like if you're being pitched a remaster, you're being pitched like it's gonna look amazing, it's gonna have all these like new bells and whistles. At least from the trailer they showed, I was like, yeah, this just kind of looks like Crysis, which is like whatever to me. But like more like the reaction, the fact that they responded so quickly is like bizarre, and I'm not even sure what they could like do about it in like a couple weeks. Just like, how could?
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like,
and
throw
like
on some texture mods.
A remaster is so much more than just the game looking better. Like maybe it looks similar, but there's gonna be under the hood stuff. Like it's just.
Right. I mean, it's going to run on modern consoles. They said apparently it's going to come out on Switch, which is like, that's
crazy.
And cool. But like, I guess I can understand like if you're like a PC player who loved Crysis, which I guess you would only be that person because it never came out in other systems. Like you would be a little disappointed of like, oh, what's the point? Like, why do I need to buy this?
Yeah. And I would say grow up.
Hey.
I mean, I saw like the leak trailer as well. And like to me, I don't know. It looked fine to me. I mean, then again, I don't know if you want to trust the word of a blind guy, but I mean, it looked fine to me. So I don't understand the
I think that's the Crysis. That's the Crysis's credit. Like that game still looks really good. Like you could argue they didn't need to do that much to like modernize it because it like looks so amazing. But yeah. it's Crysis.
Maximum gamer.
Did you know that what is it, Crysis Warhead? Dude, this is like peak like
Oh no.
this is they called the graphic settings like based on like the specs of your PC. So it was
like gamer enthusiast.
Yeah, it was like gamer is like
remember
hardcore
that.
enthusiast was like the maximum setting name. And it's like
Mm.
this is your fault. Like you've created these monsters by like doing that.
Yeah.
You know that,
Yeah.
right? Like you've created your own monsters and like
Yeah.
now they're mad at you and it's like you did this to yourself by calling that.
Yeah, as John Mulaney would say, I don't care for that shit at all.
Mhm. Amen.
Anyway, let's move on to the main event because I think everybody here has been really excited to talk about this. And hopefully everybody listening is like, fucking finally shut the fuck up. So we're going to move on to The Last of Us Part 2 and its many very impressive, very important accessibility options. So Steve, I'll let you kind of take it away.
Yeah. So again, full disclosure, I did consult with Naughty Dog on The Last of Us Part 2 in helping to provide feedback and options and suggestions for some of the 60 plus accessibility options that are in this game. And to kind of put it in perspective, if you're not sort of familiar with what accessibility has been like in gaming for the past several years, we'll use sort of like The Last of Us as an example. When the first Last of Us came out in 2013, there wasn't really any accessibility options, or at least options that were considered for accessibility at that time. And even in the gaming sphere, like there wasn't really any game that kind of focused in on that. Some had subtitles and some didn't. I'd like to kind of point out that Assassin's Creed, the first one, didn't have subtitles at all. And they didn't have that until 2. And so that's kind of where the state of accessibility was at that point. And then jump to now The Last of Us Part 2, and we're 7 years later, and we're now even kind of jumping into a new generation. To see these amount of options that are available, it's like they set a standard that now all other studios are going to have to catch up. Put in perspective, essentially in the accessibility side, this is a moment in time where we're going to be talking about accessibility before The Last of Us Part 2 and after The Last of Us Part 2. And there are just so many amazing settings. And if for those of you, I don't expect everyone to know about the reaction video that I did when I saw the accessibility settings for the first time. I knew going into it that there was definitely some amazing accessibility options just from consulting with it. And like I knew it was going to be a game changer at that point. But it was getting the final game and turning it on for a review that I was doing for Can I Play That with my colleague Courtney Craven, who was handling the deaf and hard hearing side, where I was handling the blind side. When I turned it on, at the beginning of the game, you have the option to be able to turn on 3 presets. There's blind and low vision accessibility presets, there's deaf and hard hearing accessibility presets, and there are motor accessibility presets. And that is because there are so many options in this that Naughty Dog was like, you know what? We're just going to, instead of you having to manually turn on every single setting for this, we're just going to give you, here's a preset template of all the settings, and here's a list of everything it's going to turn on and enable. And of course, at that point, even at the beginning of the game, you have the option to be able to turn on text to speech. So as I was going through those and looking at all the options, I could hear the text to speech read out all the accessibility options in my head. And it was seeing that and just seeing that there was so much there that like, I didn't think that I was going to cry. And when I recorded it, it was originally going to be a hype moment for my review video, being like, yes, this is amazing. Let's celebrate the amount of accessibility options. This is so cool. And it was going to be kind of like a get hype moment. But then when all those settings were being read out, and I was thinking of all the hard work that we've been trying to be able to put in for accessibility for a long time, and all the consultants that I've worked with and studios I've worked with, we've been trying to figure this out for quite a while, and seeing a studio do this so well, I just started crying and bawling, and I was crying for like a good solid 10 minutes. And after that, I was like, I can't put this out. Like, there's nothing I can do with this. It sat on my hard drive for 2 weeks, and until like literally 5 minutes before I posted it, I wasn't going to do anything with it. And I was like, I'll edit it into like a Twitter clip or something. And I was even then I wasn't even going to put it out. And then I was encouraged by friends and colleagues and family that they're like, no, Steve, you got to put this out. And I very reluctantly posted it, and I was definitely afraid of the feedback, because I remember that guy that got like absolutely ridiculed for crying over the Rise of Skywalker trailer. And I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. Like, I've seen like how much hate that can conjure. But like as soon as I posted it and it started to kind of pick up, I started seeing so many people love it and comment on it and message me about it. People from Naughty Dog. I even had Ashley, who plays Ellie. I had Troy, plays Joel. I had Neil Druckmann. I even had Herman Hulst message me about this, and I'm like, dude, like, okay, wait, why? Okay, this is surreal, and it goes to show like just how important accessibility is. And I will say this: Last of Us Part 2 is the most accessible game ever. It's not the 100% perfect accessible game, because there definitely is a few things that obviously that they tried to do that that are not in this in the final version. But hopefully with future patches they'll be able to add those in. But it's as closest we've ever come to having so many accessibility options that we're able to like just try stuff and just to see how things work. Like my friend Courtney at Can I Play That? She was mostly working on from the deaf and hard hearing aspect, but there was a certain problem that she was having when she was trying to use listen mode, and it was hard for her to be able to kind of know what type of enemies were in the area. And so I suggested, hey, why don't you turn on high contrast mode? And essentially like she did, and it allowed her to kind of like see a little bit more clearly what it was. And like that's what I love about it, is that there's options that even if you don't have a disability, or if you have a disability that you think of a setting doesn't really work for you, try it and see if it does. I can 100% and I have seen some of my friends who even from the blind side are completely sightless that have been able to complete the entire game. And I think there was even an audio engineer that Naughty Dog had come out on Twitter and said that you can play this with your eyes closed or completely blindfolded. And that's how in depth these accessibility settings are.
It's incredible. Excuse me. The first thing I did when I don't know what's happening with my voice. The first thing I did when I booted up the game was look at the accessibility options, and I had no idea going into it. I didn't expect it to be so robust. I went in because I always enable subtitles when I play games. I watch TV with subtitles most of the time. For me, it is an issue of focus and processing. So it's not like an issue that I have. I just find that it
makes it more comfortable for you to be able to play.
Exactly. I find that I'm absorbing the story more. Whatever it is, a game, TV, movie. So I did that, and even the subtitle options, you can change the color of somebody's name so it's easier to differentiate who's speaking, and you can on screen you can have it tell you kind of the direction of speech. And so I was really impressed with that. And I was also, there's a whole motion sickness section, and for me, motion sickness is so unpredictable. And I know people who have it really severely. I have a friend, and I tell this story sometimes because it blows me away, how much she loved the original Last of Us. And she literally just texted me to tell me she finished Last of Us Part 2 just now. She dry heaved her way through The Last of Us. She gets such bad motion sickness, and she wanted to finish it so badly. And I remember I lived with her at the time, and we were like,
I've heard this story.
Please take a Dramamine. What are you doing? Oh. And she's had this problem her whole life playing 3D games. She mostly plays 2D games or games with fixed cameras. And she was the first person I texted about The Last of Us. When I downloaded it and booted it up, I was like, you're not going to believe this. Like, you'll actually be able to play this game without puking. Like, are you ready? Like, are you ready for this? And for me, it's funny that you mentioned high contrast mode, because I enabled that. I had that setting on for much of the game because for two reasons. I found that I would get a little bit motion sickness. Well, I guess it's one reason that had two effects. I had a lot of difficulty with the looting aspect of the game. I found, when you're just looting, maybe it was my TV, but I had a really hard time seeing the loot on, like, it flashes, but I had a really hard time seeing it. And so I would kind of just like bump into walls and cabinets and wait for the button prompt. And that's not really an enjoyable way to play. So I enabled high contrast mode that you can toggle it with the touchpad. And it helped so much because I would just use it to clear rooms when I was done. And the comments on my review were like, "You're so stupid, you can't even loot." But I was like, it alleviated the issue I had with looting, which is that it took a long time. And because I'm so thorough and so neurotic, I didn't want to miss anything. It helped keep the pace up of the game. And then also because of my difficulty seeing the items, I would whip the camera around a lot to like clear all my corners in a room, and that made me motion sick. So rather than change the motion sickness options, which have to do with like camera shake and motion blur and stuff, I picked high contrast mode. Originally, I tried enhanced listen mode, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted, and high contrast mode really was it. I just hit the desk, sorry. And it just fixed, like, it's such a cool thing because like I don't have a vision related disability, but that option alleviated a problem I had with the game and improved my experience. And I think it's a testament to the work that they did on the accessibility, that like these are modes that like anyone can benefit from. It's not just like, accessibility is really for everyone. And I think that actually helped me come out of the game with a more positive attitude than some people. And it's been really hard because I feel like in the discourse around this game, the capital D discourse, we've really lost the conversation about the game's accessibility. And it's like, that doesn't undo people's issues with the game. You can dislike the game's story or the combat or whatever you didn't like about it, but there's a lot of talk about different story decisions and Twitter drama and what's a game review really supposed to be. And it's like, are we just going to ignore the work that was done here? Because it's incredible. Like, I wish I had more space in my review to talk about it. I was like pushing 2,000 words, and I was like, I'm kind of on this train of thought, and I don't want to like take a break in my like nuanced critique of violence to be like, but by the way, did you know you can close your eyes and play it? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things when I was reviewing it, I was like, I really want to have a separate article about this. And so hopefully we can probably break this out or use this discussion as a jumping off point for that, because I really think it's worth celebrating.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, even kind of going to what you were mentioning about it, like difficulty trying to be able to find items in the game. And yes, high contrast mode is 100% can be totally used for that, but there are layers upon layers of accessibility options, and kind of even add to like, okay, like to that particular issue, if you're like, okay, you know what, high contrast mode just isn't still doing it for me, there are two other options you can turn on that I can mention. There's audio cues. So if you're completely blind, this is more kind of for those, but it's like, even for me, I had it on and it was absolutely fantastic, where there's an audio glossary that will sort of let you know what button to push at certain points if you're interacting with an item. And there's a distinct sound effect for each individual button. And what's even cooler is that what precedes after those audio cues will be a sound effect for what you're going to be interacting with. So like, you walk up to a drawer and you'll hear the sound effect for triangle, and then you'll hear a sound effect of a drawer opening, and that lets you know, okay, that's a drawer and I can be able to open it. But it does that for if you're climbing a rope, And I love it actually also as well. It gives you like a little whinny whenever you're trying to like hop on a horse, which is so cool. And it also like kind of pings in the room of where certain items are, so that you can be able to know where to look, or at least in what direction to be able to look. And then even on top of that as well, there's an option to be able to do auto pickup. So if you're just walking around, like unless you have to like open up something in order to be able to find it, it'll just like once you do it, it'll just automatically pick up for you, so you're not having to constantly be hitting triangle all the time. And that's just a little subsection of how subtle and how much layered these settings can sort of interact with each other and work so well.
Yeah, it's amazing. The audio glossary was like intimidating. I was checking it out, and it's like this laundry list of different cues, and like you can go through it and like get yourself accustomed to the sound cue for each thing. And that's just like one. There's like 5 other menus you can go into. That's just one section. It's wild. Did either of you, Michael or John-Luc, like enable anything or mess around with it at all?
Yeah. I mentioned, or you mentioned high contrast mode. And that's something that I use too, because like Callie was just like spitting right there when you're saying about how like, because at least in console games, when you have to use a joystick and you can't really mess with the sensitivity too much. And for me and Callie as well, is that we need to clear out every room before we move on, or otherwise it's going to bother the shit out of us for the rest of the game. Even if it was like 2 bullets for my pistol or a damn half bottle of alcohol for crafting. It's like, I just don't want to miss anything. And I don't want to spend so much time trying to scavenge a room that's not story critical. So I also use high contrast mode to be like, okay, let me make sure that I have everything here. And for like, when I play keyboard and mouse, it's easy for me to play games like Fallout or Skyrim when I am looking for stuff, because I can use a mouse, and that's a lot easier for me. But on a controller, that I can get like motion sick, or like it'll build up over time. Like if I play for 2 hours and I'm constantly scouring rooms for stuff, like it adds up. Yeah, it adds up. So being able to use that as a thing of, okay, I'm going to be efficient during the non-critical parts of this game, just so I can not have to worry about that, was incredible. But like you said, when you boot up the game and like you see before you even start, here are all your options, and I was like, damn, it opened my eyes. Like I always like to think that, I'm conscious of how the issues that other people have who aren't like me when it comes to being able to even enjoy games. But when I saw the menus, I was like, wow, I haven't begun to understand the lengths at which games would need to go to reach out to such a bigger audience. And in that moment, I was like, oh shit, like this is going to be eye-opening for so many people who may haven't even thought of that before. And like when you tell a story about like being overwhelmed emotionally, like I can imagine what that's like, man, for like your entire life of, wow, I wish games did this, I wish games did that, I love games, but I wish games loved me in that same way. And then finally having this big ass AAA title that everyone's so hyped up for to be the shining moment of like what games can be for accessibility. Like I understand that, man. I feel you on that. That is such a cool thing to see unfold, and like it warms my heart to know that a lot of people feel seen because of that. And it's like, okay, and to have Naughty Dog, that a first party Sony exclusive title that everyone's been hyped up for, to be the example of that's strong.
Yeah. And it also, as well, it kind of gives a roadmap for other studios to be like, now there's something that everyone has played, and everyone is like, even with obviously the sales numbers that came out this week, the fast selling PS4 title or PlayStation exclusive. This is such a huge deal, but also it gives a roadmap for other studios to be like, okay, now we have this example of like how a game can be made that is as accessible as possible. And because every studio's been trying to figure it out, and they've even the studios that I consulted with, like they're always trying different things, and they're kind of trying to figure out a roadmap and a development sort of roadway to figure out what to do. And now there's like this example that Naughty Dog is basically like, hey, do this, and hopefully other studios can follow suit and copy it. I would love that.
Sets a strong precedent.
I would be fascinated if, because you mentioned like the distinct audio cues for button presses. You think about how like video games have sort of like universal verbs for certain like button presses that just kind of translate to games overall, and that helps games, you know, it becomes more comfortable where it's like, if I play a shooter, I know a shooter is going to have this control scheme. I would love to see
the universal language of a game mechanics.
Exactly. Like I would love to see if maybe like we would have those universal audio cues where like other games could maybe like take that, and it becomes a standard where it's like any game you play, you know what the sound is, which means that button, and then that just becomes like a universal thing that everyone can pick up on. Because if we standardize that, then it just makes it that much easier to play a game, because you don't have to then relearn certain audio cues every time.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. And if there's a standard, or if this, if myself or other kind of accessibility advocates and the voice we have like can be able to kind of keep promoting it, is that it isn't like accessibility is important, and this will become the norm. And I hope it's going to become a topic conversation for any sort of major game, AAA to indie, that's going to come out, because I would love to be able to get to the point when I'm reviewing a game for accessibility to nitpick the accessibility settings instead of just saying, why don't you have some?
Yeah. Even the language of it, like calling it accessibility settings is important. The fact that it's the first thing you see is like so important. Like there's so many times where you like Rockstar games are terrible about this, where like it just starts the game up and you're like, no, I haven't, I need to go turn on the subtitles. Like, and then you're like watching the opening cutscene without them, and you're like, this sucks, right? Because like the fact that they just went out of the way to have that up front, and the fact that they, you know, labeled them things like motion sickness and like, you know, like visual impairing, like the language they use, like I think just helps normalize it and make you feel very comfortable going through those settings before you even start the game. And I think that is also like such an important thing to just like make people feel like welcomed to the game as well.
It's like when you go into someone's house, like, oh, are you good? Can I get you anything?
Exactly.
Before like we do anything else? Like
you need some subtitles on. You need some high contrast mode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that example, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to steal that when I talk to.
Take it. Hey, it's yours. It's yours, man.
Yeah. Because you're 100% right. Like, and that's been something we've been telling a lot of developers for years. It's like, stop with the cold opens, because it's really difficult for disabled players to be able to jump in and play when you have to kind of go through all that. And I get it. It's a cinematic move to be able to make, but like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even the Uncharted series also kind of had a few of those sort of like cold opens, but it wasn't really until I can't remember if there was like that, but I do remember it specifically in Uncharted 4, they had that where you could be able to change the accessibility option right off the hop, and other games have tried to be able to to do that as well, and we're starting to kind of see that sort of idea of the cold opens like kind of dissipating. There's still a few that do. But I'm glad to see that that's kind of started to kind of go by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah.
And then something I've been really curious about, especially with regard to playing the game, like with, you know, only sound, like if you're completely blind, is it still enjoyable? Because sometimes, you know, accessibility doesn't always mean, not specifically in games, but it doesn't always mean like it's still going to be a good experience, or like the experience isn't it's still like it's a band-aid over an experience that is tailored to someone who can see or someone who can hear. What is your take on that specifically? Like, how do you enjoy the story? Like it's a pretty miserable, heavy game in a lot of ways. Like, how does that mesh with your feelings about the accessibility?
So yeah, it is. That's something that even for those like players without sight, it's something that we've been kind of like, generally whenever majority of the time they'll play with someone that is sighted that can be able to like sort of explain and kind of like tell them what's happening, and that can be a bit of an issue with this game in particular. There was one option that I wish they had in regards to that would make this a completely immersive experience, and I would love if they had audio descriptions of what's actually happening in the cinematics. That would basically make this an extremely like 100% immersive experience. But if you're playing this game and you're only playing via audio, you can still enjoy the story in all its aspects. You may not understand a certain percentage of what's happening, but you can at least get the main parts of it and the main beats of that story, and you can still feel that emotion. And I think in a way, I know a lot of people sort of discussed of how violent the game is and how visceral the violence is when you're playing it, and I totally get that. And but you have to also think if there is an accessibility aspect to that. The reason why that it may be so visceral to you is because of the audio, and the audio engineers designed that game so that it still was immersive for blind players, that they can still, like, when you ever hear a coat rustling, blind players can understand that that's a coat rustling, or by stabbing someone in the neck as opposed to the stomach, being able to understand that is a key and immersive. And so I get it. It is very like that's a very hard thing to hear, especially when you hear like the death screams of a clicker even after you've killed it. I get it, but for someone who's completely blind, like that just makes the world feel larger and scarier in a way, because like when you play it without sound, the jump scares don't affect any, like, a blind player. It's like, wait, what just happened? You hear, like, you may hear a bit of a sound that sort of like might scare you a little bit, but having that audio experience there, like even when you go into an area with infected, that audio experience, it kind of almost feels like an audio drama in a way, and it just immerses you in, and it makes that more scary, and it hypes that up for you. It's like, okay, all right, I can get through this. this. And so it's as someone like who would be like a completely playing this completely sightless, that's kind of why this game is so important, because it's the first game that kind of really truly did that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't phrase the question super well, but that does answer the question of, I kind of meant to ask, like, is it built from the ground up to be accessible in that way? And it sounds like it is, because it's not like an option on top of a game that was built without that in mind. It's a game that from the beginning was built to work for all sorts of different people.
Yes, Naughty Dog did several things right that we as consultants have been trying to get studios to do, and they started working on accessibility from the very beginning, and that's what we tell constantly, is that you gotta start from the beginning, because you never know halfway down the road when something isn't working or it's not you need to be able to fix. It still gives you time in that development process to be able to fix it or come up with a better solution, and it will be part of the tool, so that later on down the road, when you're kind of nearing production and you're kind of polishing everything up, you're only fixing essentially bugs within that system instead of trying to tack all like accessibility stuff on top of that. So Naughty Dog did that from the very beginning. It was a studio-wide initiative. In certain studios, you may have one person or a group of people or even a small team working on accessibility, and they're the champions of it within a studio. But with Naughty Dog, accessibility was a studio-wide initiative from Neil Druckmann all the way down. They made sure that accessibility was worked on just as much as the gameplay or the story was, and they really, and that care to detail really shows. And also as well, they brought in people like myself, consultants along the way, to provide feedback and to suggest options and suggestions for things that the developers hadn't really thought of before. And they were like, yeah, we can do that, and we can work on this. And that was like that was really cool, and they kept bringing those consultants back and saying, okay, how are we doing here? What could we be able to do to improve? And they did that through the entire process. And they were also seeking out other people as well. Like they sought me out at a conference I was speaking at on a panel of blind gamers at GDC, and I didn't know that there was Naughty Dog developers in the audience, and they came up to me afterwards and said, we want to work with you, let's make this happen.
Oh,
and
damn.
I was like, yeah, I'm like, let's make this happen, Captain. Let's do it. It's by doing those things, it kind of really made accessibility such a huge part of the process that I'm sure it was difficult to be able to create, especially with creating so many brand new options that hadn't been seen in games before. But it takes a team like Naughty Dog to basically be like, no, this is still important, and we need to make this happen. And I'm so happy with the way that they went about it, and it's exactly what we've been suggesting for years.
Honestly,
that's the real W.
Yeah, like even subtle stuff. I think the game, even if you don't go in the accessibility options, just has quality, like subtle quality of life changes that like improve the experience. Like I think the first time you go to, like when you go to a door, you have to like hold triangle to do it. Mm-hmm. I immediately expected it to be a button press, like where you had a tap triangle, because I think that's maybe how the first Last of Us did, or like games like Uncharted do it, where you have to like tap the button to like open the door. And the fact that they just let you hold it is like, even as somebody who doesn't necessarily have an issue with that, it's still like, I don't know, like after a while, like that just sucks. Like that sucks on your thumbs. Like I think it's just like realizing that there are like certain ways that games do things that are like, you know, you don't need to do it that way, or can be better for people. Like, cause I actually, like, I have a friend who isn't in any way, I would say, disabled, but I remember we played Resident Evil 5, and that game has like a ton of like button presses, and there's that button press at the end with the boulder where you have to like punch the boulder, the infamous
Chris
boulder
Redfield punches a boulder. Yeah.
So when you play that game co-op, Chris is punching a boulder, and at the same time Sheva, his partner, has to like climb up like a ledge that she's about to fall off. It is maybe the hardest button mashing I've ever experienced in a game, and he could not do it, just like physically could not do it. And that game has no ability to like remove that at all. So it's like, I think there are just things in games that like, that just everyone is just like just giving that option for people to you know, improve on, or just subtle things you wouldn't think of. Like I remember I saw some people make fun of, or kind of like comment on the fact that when you beat an enemy encounter, Ellie, or you know, will always say something like, she'll say a line to say that the enemy encounter is done. And I saw people kind of making fun of that, about how it's like, well, that's really obvious and kind of like but then I'm like, but that also tells people that the enemy encounter is done, and that's very important for people that need that confirmation.
God, that is such a good point.
Yep.
Like,
and not only that, so to even add on top of that, so yes, there are those moments where Ellie will comment like, okay, that's like, now that's done, or this room's done. But there's moments where like your companion will basically say, there's a gun to the left, and it's like, okay, I know exactly, there's someone that like has a weapon that's to my left. But even as well, like even the audio cues, it's so subtle in how amazing this is. There is an audio cue that lets you know when you've stealth killed an enemy, when you've killed an enemy from a range shot or a gunshot. But and like even as well, like not even just in the combat, but there's even a sound effect that lets you know when you're going into a cinematic and when you're coming out of a cinematic, so that you know when to be able to take control of the sticks again. Like that's how in-depth this is. And you said it right. It's exactly that. The reason why those lines of dialogue are in there is 100% for accessibility.
Yeah.
And that is just yet another answer to my poorly phrased question, which was like, was this something that came from the ground up? And I think that is the big takeaway, is like, accessibility is not like a patch. It's not, you know, a layer that you add on top of the game when you're done. It is something that you weave into the design of the game as you're designing it. And as Michael said earlier, like, which I really liked, was that, you know, when you see something like The Last of Us Part 2's just the most complete access, you know, quote unquote complete, robust, whatever you want to call it, list of accessibility options, you see that and you realize just how much you don't know as someone who games are catered to. And I think that's really important for, you know, a lot of people in this industry, you know, because by nature of what most video games are, there are going to be certain types of people that are going to be more prevalent in the gaming industry because, you know, some of us, you know, being able to afford a console is something that is, you know, kind of a prerequisite, right? Or being marketed to, or being able to hold the controller. There's all sorts of steps along the way you have to meet. And there's a lot that you might not realize you don't know. And it's really important. Like, seeing this game made me think a lot about, you know, the next time I review a game, how am I going to view the sound design or the visual design? And I had this a little bit with Animal Crossing, because I did notice that most things with sound cues also have visual cues, except for like one bug. There's one bug you can't catch if you can't hear it. And what, like, maybe you can't use headphones, maybe you have a hearing impairment, but it was such a glaring omission to me because, you know, like the balloon has a sound effect and a visual effect, the shadow. Like the catching a fish has a sound effect and a visual effect. And so it was that one I noticed, but that was like the first time I'd really stopped to think about it in depth. Like, I wonder why there's no visual indication for the mole cricket. It's also super annoying. I hate that bug. It's really annoying. I'm glad it's out of season. Bye. But yeah, I just think I've been thinking about the conversation about The Last of Us a lot, because it really haunts me every time I review a game. I don't know how all of you feel when you put your opinion out into the world, but it's a very vulnerable position to be in, especially if you were positive about something. I think there's there's merit to the conversation that's being had right now about game reviews skewing positive. I think there's myriad reasons for that, but I think, you know, I maybe I sound like a baby, but people are being really effing mean about it, and I like.
No, I 100% back that up. I've seen that myself. I've been called a corporate shill of giving it the positive review, or just even the reaction video. Some people legitimately thought I was paid to make that video as a marketing gimmick for the game, and I'm like, how? I don't, and just seeing the hate coming from it, and like, of course, like getting tagged in a few like Twitter conversations. Like I kind of, I would say 98% of the reactions I had was positive, but the 2% was coming in from so many different directions that they just were so upset. I even had actually, it's funny. Well, it's also very mean as well, but it was I laugh at it because it was a comment I saw yesterday, kind of directed to the accessibility, and someone had said that they had wished that Naughty Dog hadn't focused on so much on the accessibility and focused more on the story. And I was like, wow.
Yikes, dude.
You don't know how development works, because yes, the story people are 100% working on the high contrast mode for the game. Because yes, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Nick
But it's like,
needed to code it himself, you know, like it's the only way.
Yeah, 100%. But it's just seeing that discourse. Like I think it's just from people that are just like the negative discourse is from people that either didn't want to get it to begin with and was already had a preconceived notion of that they're going to hate it, so they're just going to hate on it for the sake of hating on it. And I totally understand, Callie, like that your review, while I totally get, and it's like 100% fair, and it's not the 10 out of 10 that people were expecting, but that's not something to like rail against, and that's not something to basically like send you so many negative comments and toxicity because of it, because that's the whole thing. It's that the game, like it forces you to kind of come up with your own opinion, and you can like it or you can not, but it's like you can have, like, you're okay with having that opinion. I just hate when people sort of force that opinion on other people.
Yeah, and there's this kind of prevailing attitude in this discourse moment or whatever, that negative reviews are more nuanced, are better criticism, are more are more honest. And I've seen games industry, games media people saying stuff like this. I saw a freelancer tweet before the embargo went up, like, I can't wait until the real critics get to review this game when it's out or whatever.
Oof.
And I was just like, I don't know what year you're living in, but I don't know. Like, I saw another reviewer, another person who reviewed the game, talk about all the dad reviewers and all the dads who love this game. And I'm like, I don't know of a single dad who reviewed this game. I know of like 10 women who reviewed the game. Like,
That's
it's
so
not a good
disappointing.
look. If any of you are listening to me, which you're definitely not, it's not a good look to act like it's just a bunch of like stuffy white dads who review these games. Like, I don't care what site it is. There's a ton of people with different perspectives whose voices matter. And like, I don't think it's arrogant or controversial to say that, like, I think my voice matters on this game. And I just get really frustrated when people are like, all these like shill reviews that aren't honest, and like, be honest with yourself about this game. And it was like, well, I was like, I liked it. I'm not going to pretend I didn't like it just because you think negative reviews are more sophisticated. And
I mean,
I
that's
just
the thing. You liked it. You didn't give it a perfect score, but
Yeah.
you still liked it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
yeah. And like, yeah, I feel like I'm in this trap right now. I'm totally just rambling, but like, the last thing I want to say is that I feel like I'm in a trap when I review games. If I like the game, then like, games media is going to treat that like a bad review. And if I didn't like the game, then I'm going to get people like the Quartering making videos about me, and I'm going
Fuck
to get a
that
bunch of
fool.
harassment.
Yeah,
So
he,
like,
he harassed me on it too. Well, he posted it, my reaction, and said, "Oh, like, even my cynical cold heart is breaking because of this." And I was like, "Okay, great." But then I kept seeing so many comments of just his community like being so toxic, and even jumping into my replies and being toxic. And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, no, dude, like I always err on the side of, I want to educate people in regards to it. Like, if you're negative and you're being a troll, I want to educate, because again, I get it. Accessibility is something that is something that not everyone knows about. And if you're curious about either my disability or accessibility in general, I have no problem answering those questions and even jumping into those conversations. Even though everyone says ignore the trolls, I will jump in 9 times out of 10 and we'll do that. But in this particular case, yeah, no, fuck the Quartering. No, I'm sorry.
Here first, folks.
We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, like, if we really want to talk about nuance in game reviews, there's room to celebrate the accessibility while still
Yes.
being critical of the things that we didn't like. Whether you liked the game or not,
sure.
you know, in my review, I still talked about the things I didn't like about the game, even though I overall really liked it. I think that, like, I guess I'm just really disappointed to see that, you know, I'm not seeing as much discussion of the accessibility, like, in the Twitter sphere of people that I
Yeah.
follow, as I would like to see. And so I'm just really happy that we got to talk to you about this. I know you've been doing like basically a world tour with people. I know you were on What's Good Games to talk about this, and like, obviously it's not the only thing you can talk about, but I really appreciate you coming to like enlighten us about what this process was like, and give us more context, because I have a greater appreciation now for what The Last of Us Part 2 did for accessibility. And when you know, you said at the beginning of the conversation that like, we're going to see it as before The Last of Us Part 2 and after. And I understand that even more now. Like, it really is unheard of. It's unprecedented. So we should take the time to say hell yeah about that, I think.
Hell yeah.
End of my soapbox.
Hell yeah.
Way.
Hell yeah.
We've been going for a really long time, and I'm sorry. We do have some questions. I think I'm going to skip one of them just so we can kind of like wrap up a little bit faster. But we do have one that I just want to talk about because it stumped all of us, I think. Really quickly, if you have questions, you can email us at afterdarkpodcast@gamespot.com, or you can join our Discord. If you want to join the Discord, you can email that email address, or you can DM us There's a lot of really awesome people in the Discord. I want to shout out really quickly Daniel Moreno, who made an incredible piece of art in Unreal Engine 4, I believe.
That's my guy. Shouts out to him.
And it's a bar scene, and there's a bunch of different game symbols and items to symbolize a bunch of GameSpot people.
I legit thought that was a photograph. I didn't think that
right?
was made in game. Holy cow.
It was a render. Daniel Moreno is, I know you're listening, and I just want to say we had a field day in the GameSpot Slack channel. We Jake posted it and was like, there's a bunch of people represented in this, and we all did like a image search, not image search, what's it called? What's it called? Like when
we scan the scene or
when
whatever.
you're a kid and you have to
investigate.
Like Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find like which
found ourselves.
All the little Easter eggs or whatever.
Yeah. So everybody's going through, and I was like, I'm Monokuma, and like Michael's like, I'm the Joker mask, and like we're all finding.
I love how like really cool. Me, Ben, and Michael, like ours could have been like completely interchangeable too.
Yeah.
Like there's like Joker, and there's like Naoto, and there's like Majima. I'm like,
that's all of us.
3 of us.
Yeah. I was confused because I was like, Monokuma might be Ben, and the ash hat might be Chastity, but it might be me. But it was just a testament to how tight everybody is. But anyway, that's a little advertisement for our Discord crew. And this question comes from email, actually, not Discord. This is from Kevin from West Hartford, Connecticut. Hey, After Dark crew, if you could replace your inner voice with any game character, who would you choose? And we read this question. We were like, huh?
I feel like I do this all the time, just like naturally. Like I'll just, I not with game characters. I do it with like YouTubers I'm watching. Like if I watch if I go on a binge and I watch a YouTuber for a long time, their voice becomes like my inner monologue for like half a day, which is like really weird.
Yeah, I get that.
So
I mean, I didn't fall asleep to Markiplier's voice at all. That's the thing.
Yes!
Oh my god! Oh, Markiplier! You know what's funny? Funny you bring him up. Like I know of Markiplier, but I've never watched him because I'm not his audience. I watched him play a psychological horror RPG just because I wanted to know about the game, and I could not get his damn voice out of my head afterward.
His voice is something else.
Like,
so I guess our answer is Markiplier.
I was trying to think of one, and like I can't think of one that's like a specific character. Because like some of my favorite games, like I said before, were some like franchise games. So like, of course, for me, my favorite games were like Star Trek games. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and I want Captain Picard's voice in my head because I just want Patrick Stewart to narrate my life as if he's giving a Stardate entry to his captain's log because I want that to happen.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Did you know that Jean-Luc was named after Jean-Luc Picard?
That's true. I'm not French.
I was gonna ask, but I'm like I would thought that was a little too nerdy. But I'm like, seriously, you're named after Jean-Luc Picard?
Yeah, no, I'm not French in any way at all. People like assume I'm French Canadian because I like grew up like on the border of like Quebec and like Vermont. But no, it's because my parents are like huge Star Trek nerds, and they just really liked the name. So like apparently
that
like
is so dope. I love it.
the way my mom tells the story is I guess they hadn't 100% figured it out yet, but like after I was born, the doctor was like, "Oh, have you come up with a name for him?" And she just immediately yelled, "Jean-Luc!" And then she like turned to my dad and said, "Like, is that okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's fine."
I mean, it was Jean-Luc or Worf, so you know, I'm glad they went with Jean-Luc.
Scotty,
Me too.
yeah.
Scotty, yeah.
We were his mom. So Jean-Luc, your mom is really into Star Wars too. When we had this joke that if like why didn't she name you after Star Wars? And then we realized Han Luke. So
that'd been pretty good, yeah.
So it works on many levels. But anyway, I think my answer.
Sorry, I was gonna say she's also really into the Matrix. You mentioned that earlier. She looks.
Your mom is awesome.
She looks just like Trinity, and she has gone as her for Halloween multiple times.
Oh,
nice.
Neo Psyche has a ring to it.
Oof. Oh my god, my parents also really like Star Trek, and I heard my dad. I'm staying with my parents right now, and I heard my dad in a work meeting talking about the Kobayashi Maru. And I was like, do they know what you're talking about? Anyway.
Okay, all right. Again, showing off something in my collection. I have an old school TNG tricorder that I've had since I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. The batteries don't work in it, but I've kept it ever since. And
it's amazing.
Yeah, that's how much I love Star Trek.
Well, this has turned into a Star Trek conversation, but I will say my answer is I want Dante Bosco, the voice actor for Prince Zuko, to narrate my.
That's
Kuya Dante. That's my boy. Oh my God, Dante. I've said this before, but Dante Bosco is an icon in the Filipino community. Shouts out to Dante Bosco. Fucking, I think he's like 45, still looking young. That's my guy.
What? Dante Bosco's on TikTok now, and he reacts to TikToks about his voice.
Oh my God.
I need to follow him.
There's a TikTok, like a song going around TikTok that's like someone who sounds like Dante Bosco doing a rap as if he's Prince Zuko, and he talks about breaking Katara's back or some shit.
Whoa.
Whatever it is. It's about fucking, but like it sounds like Zuko is doing it, and I watched a video of Dante Bosco reacting to the lyrics and being like, that's me. God. So anyway.
I mean, I'm not gay, but if I were Dante Bosco, oh boy.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying. Oh my God.
Rufio, man, that's what got me. That's what got me as a kid. I was like, okay. All right. I see.
His TikTok handle is the same as his handle everywhere else, which is Rufio Zuko. So if you want to go follow Dante Bosco on
the guy
TikTok,
knows.
I know a lot about Dante Bosco.
Oh my God. Did you even before Avatar, he starred in a movie called The Debut, which in my community, since we're like a majority Filipino, for us, it was in theaters, and it was a Filipino movie in theaters starring Dante Bosco and Joy Bisco, who's a cousin of someone that we know from San Diego. She's like a mutual cousin of a mutual friend. And it was just like this wild experience of like being 12 years old. I'm like, what? Like there's a Filipino movie in theaters? What the fuck? And so from that point on, we stand Dante Bosco. That's my guy.
So sorry, Kevin, that isn't from a video game, but I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah. My answer is Sans. This is my inner monologue.
My answer would be Keith David. That's it.
But is he doing like Anderson, or is he doing like?
He's doing all of it, man. Keith David has like one like tone, and it works for every single thing that he does, including my inner monologue.
He's Captain Anderson in Mass Effect. He plays himself in Saints Row 4.
Saints Row, yep.
Which is really good. He's Childs in The Thing, one of my favorite movies.
He's also in ATL, the movie with T.I. that I watched when I was 15 and loved
Keith
a lot.
David's awesome. I love Keith David. Oh my God.
That's a real answer.
Talk about people we stand. Keith David, man. Oh my God.
Hell yeah.
Love that man.
Let's see. This one I think I just want to shout it out because I don't think we have time to really talk about it in depth, but I do want to address it. This is from Joshua Jones from Modesto, California. Hey, Night Crew. Just a test of a nickname for the host of the podcast. I like it. I like Night Crew. While playing The Last of Us Part 2, I ran into an audio dialogue glitch, guessing near the end of the game where the subtitles are showing, but no audio from the characters. Music is clearly playing it safe before the glitch, so I can hope for a patch for the game. Had a similar glitch in Spider-Man First DLC where a whole cutscene was glitched and acted like it was played when it didn't. Just wondering if anyone of the crew has had technical glitches for this generation of consoles, glitches that don't break the game, but break your heart.
Aww.
Thanks for reading this. P.S. I found manga and anime stuff on books in The Last of Us Part 2. There's a character who likes anime. Like Jake's like, there's Pearl Jam, and then I was like, but did you hear the guy say anime? Because now you can't like this game.
Is it Jesse?
No, it's not Jesse.
Damn.
It's Manny.
It's Manny, who's great. I had a horrible glitch in Last of Us 2, actually. The game crashed at the very end during a very pivotal moment of the game. It crashed. And we were just like, just turn it back on. Like, we have to see what happens. We're like, oh my God.
I think without even saying anything, I probably know exactly what you're talking about.
You probably know. I mean, there could be multiple, but like it was right near the end, and we're like, oh my God.
Dude.
But the funniest thing is, I was talking to my friend like a day after because he had just beat it and we were talking about it, and he apparently had it crash in the exact same spot, and I was like, oh my god. So if Naughty Dog's listening, maybe you need to fix that, because it might have not just been us, and that is a heartbreaking place to have that happen.
Oh,
I'll
I'll send that over to him.
Yeah, let them know, because I mean, that's the thing. Like, games are so complicated. There's going to be there's just going to be weird things that you can't predict or can't catch in QA. Like,
I can't even get mad anymore. Like, if there's like a glitch or a bug, I'm like, hey, shit, man. Like, I feel bad. I'm like, oh, damn.
I couldn't do better. I'm sorry I made that happen.
Yeah.
Like,
when I play games, it's like of course I see a lot of glitches and bugs all the time, especially when I'm consulting, because it's like, okay, it's like it's not even fully made yet. But I will say there's one story. It's not in regards to this previous gen, but it's also like it's a fun. Like, I don't know if it was an Easter egg, but it was a glitch that I turned out to be something really cool. So I don't know if anyone here or anyone listening has ever played The Matrix Online back in the day. But again, back to my love of The Matrix. Of course, I jumped into that in the beta, and I absolutely loved it. But there was actually a radio station that I was a part of at that point, which was really, really cool. But we found, actually, it was a bunch of us DJs in the station. It was called Radio Free Zion. We found out about this glitch that it sort of took you into a spot in the Matrix that you wouldn't have been able to know about, but from watching the movies. And we had to go into this really weird spot in the mega city, and you have to go downtown, you have to go into this basement and kind of go through this specific wall, and you have to kind of jump down a little bit as if you're kind of like jumping through down some stairs, and essentially you kind of like you go underneath the world, and then you have to basically kind of like Matrix fly your way underneath until you find this really large box that like you just don't know what it is until you fly in, and all of a sudden you're in the infinite hallway of doors from the Matrix sequels. And I loved that so much. I took so many like screenshots and videos that I only have one video left to this day. Like all the other rest I lost. But it was like one of those things, like I don't know if that was intentional to be able to like have to go through all those hoops to
that's what I was gonna say. That's like,
because it's
part
so
of the
Matrix
lore,
to
right?
do that. Yeah. But it was like kind of one of those glitches that turned out so amazingly well.
That's a beautiful story. I like, that's way better than like the game crashed and I was
during the ending.
I love that. I was gonna say I did experience one in The Last of Us Part 2 where I opened a cabinet and then Ellie's arm got stuck like this and kept doing this like
horrifying,
like weird like body horror like twisty thing behind her.
Stretch, yeah,
like stretched outwards. I can't say like this because people are gonna listen to the audio. It was stretched outwards as if she was opening a cabinet, but then it didn't return to her side. And just reloading the last autosave fixed it. It wasn't a big deal, but Alessandro Filari of GameSpot called me because he encountered a glitch where it's a fist fight you do kind of like halfway through the game with a very like large enemy, human enemy, and like he was like, it's not letting me punch. And I was like, he called me. He was like, please tell me I don't have to restart. Am I supposed to not be able to punch? And I was like, no, you should definitely be able to punch her. Like,
wow.
Like, I'm really sorry. I think you're going to have to load. So I told him, like, he had tried reloading and restarting the game. And I was like, why don't you try going into the menu, like the story select or chapter select menu, and then loading in from like it's sort of fresh. It takes like the last time you encountered that chapter and completed it, it like has your the ammo you had, so you're not gonna like lose like, oh, I had all this ammo and now I have nothing. So I was like, try that, and that's what worked. But he was just like, I don't want to start over.
That's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. But that was another one that turned out happy, but not as good as the Matrix one. That's the best one.
Yeah, that's top tier.
And then unfortunately, I don't think we have time for the last question, but I do want to do a shout out to Depressed Carbon. Wow, I really butchered that. Depressed Carbon. Thank you for the question. I'm sorry we don't have time to get to it today. Hopefully we have time on another show. And I like your name. And then finally, shout out to Splat Tim, who actually gave us a shite. No.
Whoa, shite out.
Kelly, do you need another drink?
First I said depressed, and now I'm saying shite. I'm really
whole nother meeting to Splat Tim.
really struggling. We're at the tail end. I got this. I do need another drink.
You got it.
Tim gave you and me a shout out, Michael. Splat Tim says, quick shout out to Michael Hyam and Callie. Loved and appreciated your answers to my music questions last week on the pod. I enjoyed listening to the whole discussion, but y'all really brought it.
Yeah.
I could talk about the music in P5 Royal, Undertale, and Sayonara Wild Hearts for days. So I just wanted to acknowledge Splat Tim there. Yeah, any final thoughts, you guys? We've been going for a while. I'm very sorry to either you, Jean-Luc, or to Jake. I don't know who's editing this.
This has been so much fun, but at the same equally enlightening. Like, I've learned so much. I've had such a fun time talking all kinds of bullshit, but also substantial stuff. So this is top tier, S tier episode of GameSpot After Dark. You know what it is when you watch it, when you watch or listen to this episode, man. Damn.
Then that is where we will leave it. So, as always, we're going to do the where can we find you and plug section of the podcast. So we'll start with Steve, our guest of honor. Where can people find you on Twitter? Website, obviously, we talked about. Can I play that? And do you have anything you want to shout out? Anything you're working on?
Yeah, so you can, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Steve Saylor, Saylor. Although I did years ago claim the regular spelling of it and say this is not the Steve Saylor you're looking for, and drink my thing. So yeah,
beautiful.
Steve Saylor on Twitter, or my YouTube channel, youtube.com/snowball. Yes, I've had that is my actual URL.
Amazing.
I signed up in YouTube in like November 2005, so I've had it for like 15 years. That used to be my nickname back in the day. Yes, you can go to caniplaythat.com, where we have amazing reviews for video games from an accessibility standpoint. We have a ton of Last of Us coverage if you want to really do a deep dive into the accessibility. We had some interviews with some of the developers at Naughty Dog. We had interviews with all of the consultants that worked on the game as well, and we have even some thoughts on some stuff for motor disabilities, where our mobile editor Grant Stoner, he actually can't play the game because he has trouble trying to be able to hold a DualShock controller. So he's trying to figure out a hack by trying to figure out a way to be able to use the Xbox adaptive controller by connecting it to a PlayStation. So he's trying to figure out if he can be able to do that. So keep an eye on Can I Play That for that. But as far as even on my own YouTube channel, actually, I literally just finished a video that will go up. It'll definitely be up by the time this episode airs, where I do a deep dive into possible accessibility in Cyberpunk 2077 based on some of the gameplay that we've seen already. And I have some concerns and I have some hopes for the game. So if you want to check that out, you can go, like I said, youtube.com/snowball, or it'll also be on caniplaythat.com as well.
Awesome. Jean-Luc, what about you?
I'm working on some cool stuff with Jake that's cyberpunk related. If you like cool lore videos that like dive into that world, we're trying to get build up some hype around that game. And there's so much to dive into because there's like 40 billion rule books for that game that I've been like slowly reading over the last couple of weeks, which is like a lot of fun.
We gotta talk because I've been
yes, absolutely. I'm down. And then on hopefully me and Ben will have something cool next week on a game that's coming out. That
I know the one.
That if you know me and Ben, you know what we like. We will hopefully be doing something around that. I mean, we got I was like, I have to do something around it. So
I'm hyped for that.
Yes.
Wow. We have been just what a tease.
I would say you piqued my interest.
That's the whole episode, is just how do we string people along until we get to the thing that everybody wants.
We just keep doing that until we get canceled.
Yeah. What about your Twitter handle?
Oh, at John Wick IP.
Jake always forgets to. Michael.
Oh, damn. You can find me and all of my bullshit at Michael P. Hyam on Twitter. This week has been wild. I'm going to have coverage of SinoAlice, which I just talked about. I have a full interview with some of the developers and Yoko Taro himself and all of his wild answers. Death Stranding PC coverage, got that up. Hyperscape coverage, the Ubisoft Battle Royale game. Some Play for All stuff as well. And also to celebrate the 4th of July, I am going to have my Deus Ex 20th anniversary feature in which I talk about how it is a takedown of capitalism. And Steve, I wanted to ask you if you know about Deus Ex at all because of your love for the Matrix and how there's so many parallels.
Dude, I am so gonna check out that piece for sure because Deus Ex, man.
Oh my god, I wish we got to talk about it here. My god.
We'll have to have him back on.
Damn. Okay. Yes.
I am available.
Man, but yeah, that's something I've been working on. I've been chipping away at because it's pretty heavy as is, so I want to take a step back and make sure I'm not wiling out. But Deus Ex definitely means a lot to me. It's one of my favorite games of all time, one of the most influential games I've ever played, and it is more relevant now than it has ever been, especially as an adult who is experiencing the world as it is today. So peep that when the weekend hits.
Sweet. I don't have a whole lot that I'm working on. I'm actually just really looking forward to reading all of this stuff and watching these videos. I am super intrigued about how the adaptive controller might work on PS4 because
me too.
That would be something.
That works. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the one thing I'm working on is and the Animal Crossing update is going live. It'll be live by the time you listen to this podcast, so I'm going to be checking that out. Probably going to try not to work over the weekend as it is a holiday weekend, but maybe Monday or something I'll have some thoughts about swimming and Animal Crossing. Real hard-hitting stuff over at my desk. You can follow me on Twitter at InkyDojiko, INKYDOJIKKO. I can't change it because the having a verification badge really protects me from a lot of mean comments. So I'm sorry about my Twitter handle, as always. Thank you for listening. We love you all. Thank you again, Steve, for coming by the podcast. You didn't have to go anywhere, but thanks for joining our Zoom call. And
it was a pleasure just to join in here via my apartment.
Yeah.
And Leonardo says hi.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Wow.
On that note, we will say goodbye and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye.